This is One Voice Radio and Media. We would like to give a warm welcome to our special guest, Figen Murray. Today we would like to talk about her work, the work that Figen is involved with. Okay, Sam?
First of all, thank you for coming in to see us today, and how are you?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's exciting to be here, and yeah, I'm good. I'm very busy at the moment, but that's been my life the last few years, to be honest.
Louise?
Okay, Louise?
Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
So, before Martin died, I was a therapist for about 23 years. I ran my own business. I had 3 different jobs within that. I was giving therapy. I was also a life coach. And in addition to that, I was supervising other therapists to make sure that their work is safe. So that's what I was doing until Martin died. Very sadly, after Martin died, I realised I can't do that job anymore.
Can you tell us about Martin's Law?
So Martin's Law came about when Martin died. The first year we didn't do anything, and we were just, I in particular was heavily grieving. But then my husband was given some concert tickets to a singer for a singer he likes, and that was on Father's Day in June that year, but the concert wasn't until December. And December came, and I remember getting myself ready, thinking, if I take a very small handbag with me, just enough for my phone and some tissues, it'll make the bag search at the venue easier, because I thought after the arena attack, surely everywhere, particularly in Manchester, security is going to be very strict. And when we got there, nobody checked my bag, nobody even wanted to see the entrance tickets for the concert, nobody checked anything, and that really upset me. And then I waited till after Christmas, and then I did a bit of research and realised there's no law to keep people safe. There are laws on how many toilets a venue has to have, how hot the food has to be that they sell, but there's no law for security. And that's when I started a petition for Martin's Law. And Martin's Law is basically, we want venues to do 5 things. We want, number 1, we want people to train their staff in the free of charge online ACT e-learning training, which is a 45-minute video. We want, for number 2 is that we want people to have a risk assessment to just go around the building, both outside and inside. Think like a bad person who wants to get into the building and cause damage and harm people. So we want people to go around and check how a bad person could access the building. And anything that they find leads to number 3, deal with anything you found that makes the building vulnerable, and do whatever you need to do to stop people getting in. Number 4 is that there is a terrorism action plan, and that staff who work at the venue know what to do in case of an attack. Do you know where you yourself can escape, and where your colleagues and your customers and visitors can escape? Or is there a room you need to lock everybody in safely, so that people are informed? And the final one is for bigger venues, that the local authorities work with the venue. That basically is Martin's Law.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything you have done that have helped people with disabilities if a terrible situation were to happen?
Not directly, however, the legislation, it's really important that in case of a terrorist attack, the venue knows who is in the building, who their customers are. So if there are people in wheelchairs, for instance, the security people at the venue, the management, everybody who works there needs to be aware that in case of an attack or an emergency, a massive emergency, what to do and how to keep people with a disability safe. That is really, really important.
Yeah.
Amelia, no, Megan, sorry.
Does Martin's law cover any other events such as sport events or festivals?
Yes, Martin's Law, when it comes in, it will cover many, many venues. So what the government has done, we speak a lot to the government behind the scenes. And what we said to them is, apart from the Manchester Arena attack, all the other terrorist attacks have been in smaller venues like London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, Borough Market, Reading Park in Reading. It all happens in smaller venues. So we said to them, the big venues already know what to do. They just don't do it because they don't have to, because the legislation isn't there yet. But it's the smaller venues, the big cafes, the big restaurants, the cinemas, the theatres, they need to know what to do in case of an emergency, because it's the smaller venues that can be attacked and staff there have no knowledge about what to do. So for a whole year we've been sort of having many discussions, and they finally came up with a two-tier system, where the first tier is for any venue that has at least 100 people plus in the building. That can be schools, that can be theatres, that can be the big Costa Coffees and Starbucks. It can be theatres with 100 plus capacity. It's going to be hospitals, churches, anywhere where people gather in a group of at least 100. They have to abide by the rules of Martin's Law.
Okay, thank you. Amelia, if you just...
Do you feel you reached your goal with getting Martin's Law implemented?
Not quite, nearly, we're nearly there. It's been, I started the campaign about 4 years ago, and thought, because government campaigns online, they last 6 months and then they stop automatically. And I thought, great, after 6 months I can go and hide again and be a very unimportant person and just disappear and mind my own business and get on with my private life. But unfortunately, I didn't realise that working with the government takes an awful long time. I've had to learn to be really patient. And I didn't realise we're going to have COVID, that slowed it down. I didn't realise we're going to have so many changes in Prime Ministers, Home Secretaries and Security Ministers. I've, for instance, seen 6 different Security Ministers. I have seen 2 different Home Secretaries, and I believe since the campaign started, this is now the 4th Prime Minister. So there's been lots of changes which held Martin's Law up. But I had a telephone conversation with the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, in December, and I asked him, can Martin's Law be properly finished and a law by the 6th anniversary, which is next month? And he said, I'd love to do that, but I can't because I'm bound by government procedures. So he explained that once the draft legislation is in, that he will submit hopefully next month before the 6th anniversary, then there will be a committee activated that looks at legislation and scrutinises it. I think it's the Home Affairs Select Committee it's called. They have 2 months where I'm going to be allowed to give evidence and give my version of why I think it's so important. And after those 2 months of this committee scrutinising the legislation, it then goes to the 2 different houses. It's going to do a ping-pong thing back and forth between the House of Commons and House of Lords. So it's going to go back and forth a few times, and eventually it will be signed off by the King, and then it will become legislation. I personally, my experience has been that the government is working very, very slow, and I had to accept that. So I personally don't think the legislation will be a law properly until early next year, hopefully by the 7th anniversary. but it will definitely happen.
Thank you. Jenny?
With the 10-year anniversary coming up, can you tell us how you are feeling that year done? And do you have anything lined up?
Do you know, the grief will never stop. I've literally got a Martin-shaped hole deep in my soul. And that, as a mum in particular, will always be there. I miss him terribly every moment of the day. But obviously life continues, and there's a lot of work I do, and the family is continuing to live their life. But what we do every year is, as a family, we come together, and also Martin's friends, who have become very close friends to us now. They'll often come for sleepovers. And what we do every year, the weekend before the anniversary, we have a party in memory of Martin with all his friends. His dad and stepmom come, and obviously my family, my husband and I and my children. We're all getting together and we reminisce. And we've had a tree planted in the park opposite our house. We go around the tree and sit by the tree, which is always lovely. And we remember Martin that way.
Oh, lovely. Hello.
We have seen Martin has several memorials. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, that's very true. So we used to live in Heaton Moor, and Martin grew up in Heaton Moor. So the people of Heaton Moor actually got together, put some money together, and actually got a bench established in Heaton Moor Park, which is lovely, and it's got a little plaque on. And every year, certainly on his birthday in December, we go around and we put some balloons down and some flowers. So that's one. And then, of course, there is also the Glade of Light in Manchester. Interestingly enough, the Glade of Light is for all the victims of the attack. But as a family, we don't have that deep connection there.
Yeah.
And personally speaking, I feel the Glade of Light is a really, really important memorial for the people of Manchester, because I personally believe that this terrorist who blew himself up did not necessarily target Martin personally or any of the other 22 victims. He just wanted to cause maximum harm. He didn't care who he killed. But I think because it was at the Manchester Arena, a place where so many of us living in Greater Manchester go, and you know, it's right in the heart of Manchester. I think the terrorist attacked the whole city, and I think the people of Manchester perceive it as that.
Yeah, I heard about the attack anyway, because I think it's on the, I heard about the attack, about the Manchester Arena attack, and I feel sorry for the attack. I really am. I'm very, devastated that the attack was, it's going to happen.
Thank you for saying that. I think so many people like you felt that and felt their city was attacked, which is why it was incredible to witness that the whole of Manchester literally came together and supported all of us. And we felt that love, we felt the kindness, we felt the hurt of everybody else and the massive support. We felt, and that's carried us through actually. It really did.
Right, how old is Martin?
He was 29 and a half years old.
Okay.
Sam?
Actually, can I come back to the
Yeah, of
memorial?
course you can, yeah.
The most important memorial, before you ask your question, Sam, is the tree we had planted opposite our house, because to me, that is, when we put some of his ashes under the tree, to me that is the memorial that's most important to me. I open my curtains every day and I see the tree. At night I see the tree and say good night. To me that is my emotional connection to Martin. And for me, trees are also very symbolic of life and continuation of life.
Yeah.
So it's a very uplifting thing to have a tree planted. And I look forward to the day when the tree it's only a baby tree, when it grows in 10, 15 years, and I see a young family having a picnic underneath it. Martin would love that.
That's very comforting.
It is, yeah. Sorry, Sam, to ask the question.
You're saying, Sam, yeah?
Is this now your full-time job?
Actually, would you believe it? It is. It's keeping me incredibly busy, because what I have done, I have become a little bit determined, quite determined actually, to make Martin's Law succeed to the point where, you know, I'm really rubbish at maths, but I'm really good at networking and making connections with people. So I made so many connections in the security industry, within counter-terrorism police, within the police service itself, that I am getting constantly asked to go to conferences and speak. Martin's Law is also now known internationally. Even the White House in Washington knows about it. I have been to Istanbul. I'm going back to Istanbul in July. I've been to Germany in November. I've been asked to go back next November to Germany. I've been to Washington, I've been to New York and talked at the UN, the United Nations, and I am in September going to Iceland and talk there at the Icelandic Parliament. So there is nowhere in the world where there is a security legislation to keep people safe at big venues. So this is groundbreaking. It is really, it's never been seen before. So a lot of other countries are very interested in the legislation and watch what happens here. So it's literally a full-time job. I'm sat, if I don't travel around going to meetings and conferences, I'm sat at my desk from 9 till 6 every day.
Thank you. So I'll just ask the last question, if that's okay. So what would you say to someone who is dealing with grief after losing a loved one in such terrible circumstances?
So this is where choice comes in a little bit. Obviously, you need to give in to grief initially. I was totally not able to function. In fact, my husband said to me one day, you know, I'll buy you a new pan set because you've burnt all of them, but I won't do it until you stop burning food. Because my brain didn't function. I was so deep in grief. I'd put a frying pan on the cooker, crack an egg in, and then sit in the kitchen at the table, and then suddenly think, oh my God, I can smell burning, what is that? I'd forgotten that 2 minutes prior to that I'd actually put that on. And I did that all the time. I'd leave the fridge door open, I'd leave the freezer door open, I'd leave the front door open sometimes. My brain just did not function. But it was after the first anniversary I started to think a little bit clearer, and I started to become active. So I would say allow that intense grief initially, but don't stay in it completely at that level, because otherwise it completely swallows you up. And my answer to my grief was find a purpose to make the death of your loved one count for something. And Martin's Law is my purpose, and his death will obviously mean a lot to other people. Other people's families will be safe through that. So, yeah, grieving is difficult, but the other thing I would say is grief obviously also causes sometimes people to be angry. Try and look at that anger in a way that you can maybe channel that anger into something more positive. I was never angry from the start. In fact, so much so that 4 weeks after the attack I went on national TV and I forgave the terrorist who killed Martin. And people kept saying, oh, you're crazy to do that. But I felt very much that it was the right thing to do, because anger breeds anger and hate breeds hate. And I just felt that at the time in Manchester, so many people were so angry that they wanted retaliation, they wanted to hate people. And I felt if I forgive publicly, I can break the cycle of hate in Manchester. And hopefully I achieved that to some point. But the most important thing for me was I need to stay true to my value of kindness. And I also figured that the terrorist, it's not right what he did, he killed my son.
Camera's gone off. I'll just put it back on.
Sorry, you can continue.
So I feel that the terrorist who killed Martin, obviously people would say you have every reason to be angry. But I looked at the bigger picture and I looked backwards and thought that young man who did the attack was once an innocent baby when he was born, and therefore I feel somebody poisoned his mind, and that made me able to forgive him.
Yeah, I was going to say something anyway. Yeah, I heard about the attack. Yes, because to know when the attack began, when the box office in the arena, I mean that's where the attack was.
That's right.
Attack began.
Yes.
And because the question I'm going to say, I've been to quite a lot of concerts recently, and I've got a question for you. Was your favourite band or solo artist?
Martin's, the attack happened at a concert where a solo artist was singing.
Yeah, I think
It
it is.
was Ariana Grande.
Yeah, I heard about Ariana Grande. She's quite good.
She is.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. It was very interesting.
Thank you for having me on
Yeah,
the
you're
programme.
very welcome. Thank you.
you.
Great. Brilliant.